to the session on the payables management, which will where we'll be talking about the significance of payable as a important source of finance, and we'll also try to identify the factors that has an impact on the level of payable that a company can manage. We'll also talk about the advantages of having the payable, and probably try to end our discussion with something like effective management of the payables. So, with this objective in mind, we'll let us start with the concept of the payable management. Now, you see that these days a substantial part of your business, like purchase of goods and services, that is being done on credit rather than on being on cash. Now, see, while the supplier of goods and services, they have a tendency to perceive the credit as a form for enhancing that they're promoting their sales. Suppose, see, in a transaction, there are two sides: the seller side and the buyer side. Now, the seller of goods and services, for him, the credit facility can act as something to promote his sales. Whereas, from the buyer's perspective, he will look at this credit facility as something of a financing opportunity, or like a loan for goods or inventory. Now, the supplier credit, most of the times we refer to the supplier credit as accounts payable, like trade credit, like trade bill, or acceptance, traders acceptance, commercial bill, and all, depending on the exact nature of the facility that we're talking about, the exact nature of the credit that we're talking about. So we can the names of this trade credit could take up any of these things depending on the specific requirement of a scenario. Now, this trade credit, it is a major part of your current liability in the businesses. Now, when we talk about the working capital, we have the current asset side and the current liability side. So, in the current liability part, this is a major portion. This trade credit is a major portion of this current liability part, and usually businesses use this current liability as a source of, as a primary component of the financing part for their inventories. So this is how the position of trade credit in Indian businesses is. Now we talk about the significance. Now see, the payables, which constitute a the current liability or the short term liability, it represents the buyer's obligation to pay a certain amount on a date in the near future for whatever goods and services he has purchased. The point is, suppose you have a supplier and you have procured raw material from your supplier to the tune of, let us say, 10 lakh, and you have promised him that you will pay the dues of 10 lakh within 40 days. So, which means that you have created a current liability on yourself, and your supplier has given you the trade credit. So, you are required to pay that 10 lakh amount within 40 days of time. Now, the payable, basically this 10 lakh that you were supposed to pay on the point of purchase, you are deferring that payment for 40 days because your supplier allows you that. So, this is basically the deferment of cash payment on a short term basis. Obviously, when we're talking about working capital distance, these are all short term within a year. So, these are all short-term distance. So the cash that I had to pay right now, I'm paying it. I'm able to pay it after 40 days. So basically, I'm deferring the payment, the cash payment. So this is short-term deferment of cash. Now, see, we have to be very careful regarding the usage of the term the trade credit vis-a-vis the consumer credit. Now, consumer credit is when the end user of the product or the service, when he is buying from the producer of the goods and service, so for the purpose of consumption, and he is buying it on credit basis, then we say that this is the consumer credit. For example, suppose I buy a piece of clothing, for my own use, so that becomes and I am buying it on, let us say, for a 10-day credit with a 10-day credit. So that is a consumer credit. When I am going to use it, I am going to consume the product and I am buying it from the seller of the product. So that is a consumer credit. Whereas suppose I have a I have a showroom where I am procuring the clothing from the source, from the producer, and in my showroom, and I'm selling those clothing item to the end users. So for me, the credit that I'm availing here is a trade credit. Okay, so because it depends on whether I'm buying the good for the end use or whether I'm buying the good for resale. That will decide whether I'm talking about the trade credit or a consumer credit. So when I'm talking about a trade credit is a source of short-term finance for the organizations. Consumer credit is not. Okay, when I'm talking about consumer credit, basically I'm talking about the receivable part, and trade credit is my payable part. So we have to be very clear regarding this particular distinction between the trade credit and the consumer credit. Now, the trade credit or the payable, they serve as a non-interest bearing source of funds in most of the cases. As I said, in most of the cases, not in all cases. We will see during the course of discussion of this particular class that when the source of trade credit becomes, interest bearing, we'll just see that. But for most of the cases, it is non-interest bearing. Basically, it is a free source of finance. Now, why do we say that? Because the agreement between the buyer and seller is such that the industry norm is that they will give you 40-45 day credit. So for the 40-45 days, suppose you had to pay 1 lakh rupee in the beginning of, suppose you purchased today, you could have paid 10 lakh rupee today. If you are availing a credit of 40 days also, then also you are paying the same 1 lakh rupee. So the point is, there is no interest charge on these things. So normally, so these are said as non-interest bearing source of finance. So this is very lucrative for the buyer, on the for the buyers, on the someone who is on the buyer side. And these are spontaneous source of capital, because these kind of trade credit, they keep on arising during the course of business. Like I am producing things and I'm selling. So, and similarly, I'm continuously procuring the raw material. So the supplier of raw material, he goes on supplying the raw material. So this is because I have an operating cycle. Similarly, the supplier also has an operating cycle. So during the normal course of business, this kind of trade credit arises. I don't have to actually arrange for trade credit; it automatically arises in the due course. So this is called as a spontaneous source of finance, because it is automatic. It need not be arranged for, like bank finance. You have to go. Write a proposal. You have to apply for the loan and then you get the loan. This is not like that. You don't have to arrange for the trade credit. You get these are all spontaneous or autonomous sources of finance. So this is why the buyer, the party who is on the buyer side, for him this is a very good lucrative prospect of a source of finance. Now, when we talk about the types of trade credit, now you can talk about, let us say, something like there could be three kinds of trade credit. One is an open account. When we talk about this open account, now in open account there is informal agreement between the supplier and the buyer. Now you don't enter into the documentation process, like creating a document or anything of that. The buyer and supplier, by virtue of doing business for a long period of time with each other, they have developed a certain credit worthiness, certain trustworthiness among themselves. And when the buyer is confident of the credit worthiness of the buyer, the supplier is, when he is confident of the credit worthiness of the buyer, then he dispatches the goods required by the buyer without any documentary evidence, and the buyer in fact enters the same invoice. Along with the invoice, if the buyer enters the same invoice with the particulars of the quantity dispatched and in his books of accounts as payable. So the rate, the price payable, and the payment terms are all mentioned there. Now here there is no, except for that particular invoice that is a part of every dispatch. Except for that, these are all verbal arrangements. These are all the business is being done on trustworthiness. So these are all open account. There is no documentary evidence that there is no documentary, contract or anything like that in this. These are all open account. The second kind of trade credit could be the promissory note. It's here you create a formal document. It has to be signed by the buyer that he is promising to pay the amount on a particular date to the seller. Now, why this kind of scenario happens? Probably in the past, when the client fails to honor his payable terms, if that has happened in the past, then probably the supplier of fund can impose this kind of he loses the trust on you, and he can say that, okay, I'm still willing to do business with you, but then you sign a note, you create a promissory note or sign a document wherein you give me a commitment that you are going to pay me on this particular date this particular amount. So this is basically you are acknowledging that there is a debt on you. So that is a promissory note. The most formal kind of an agreement is the bills payable, which is a negotiable instrument. Now, these are commercial drafts or bills payable, where all the terms and conditions, these are all mentioned, and you create a bill. The instrument is actually created or drawn by the seller, and it is accepted by the buyer for payment on expiry of a specified duration. Now, the bill or draft, it will also indicate the banker to whom the payment can be made, and the seller can wait till the maturity of the bill to actually encash the bill, or if he decides to encash it earlier, he wants liquidity, then he can simply present the bill with his banker, and the bank will pay him a certain amount of money, which is a discounted value of the, suppose your sale value, your bill is for the price for an amount of 1 lakh. When you present, and you're supposed to get that amount after 45 days, but you need cash, so you present the bill with your banker, and the banker will do what is, he will immediately make a payment, but not for 1 lakh rupee. Probably he can, if he charges 2%, so he will give you 98,000 on the spot. So when you require liquidity, most of the times when you are actually creating bills, they are discounted by the they are liquidated by the seller and discounted by the bank immediately, so that the seller gets immediate cash. So the 2% and when the bill matures, the same is presented to the buyer, and the buyer on the due date makes the payment. So the differential here, that is the 1 lakh and the 98. The buyer will deposit 1 lakh with the bank, and the bank has already paid the seller or the supplier 98,000. So this difference of 2,000 rupees, that is the earning for the bank from this bills discounting. So you can have trade credit and in any of these three formats: the open account, the promissory note, or the bills payable. So see, open account is a very convenient method of arrangement, but then to have a business in the open account, nobody should be failing the commitment. So when there is when the buyer and supplier both, they stick to the commitment, then the open account functions very smoothly. But if there is a breach of contract, breach of any promise at any point of time, then you have to talk about the promissory notes or the bills payable. In fact, bills payable is a very good mechanism of having spontaneous finance and then automatically discounting with the bank. That's a very formal arrangement. Now, when we talk about the what could be the determinants of trade credit, you see, the size of the farm could be a big determinant. Like the smaller farms, they have increasing dependence on the trade credit, and they find it is very difficult for them to arrange alternate source of finance, because the banks will always look for the track record of a farm. So small size farms, this type of farms, for them it is very difficult to get the trade credit, whereas for the larger farms, they can get the trade credit very easily. when you talk about the industrial category, now the different categories of industry or the commercial enterprises, they have varying degrees of dependence on trade credit. Now, in case of certain businesses, the regular business practice would be such that the payment has to be done on cash basis. If you are talking about a monopoly situation, the firms might, insist on a cash payment. So, depending on the industrial category you are dealing with, so for example, there could be funds where the inventory is turning over very fast. Farms which are in monopoly position, the inventory is, let us say, turning over every 15 days. But the farm is able to get a credit term of 30 days, meaning that credit not only is financing the inventory, but it's also financing a remaining part of the current asset as well. So it depends on the kind of industry you are dealing with, the kind of competition you are dealing with. So the trade rate will be accordingly decided. When we talk about the nature of product, see, the product could be fast selling, a product could be slow selling. You can talk about the examples of, let us say, fast selling product is something like consumables. When you talk about a slow selling product, you can talk about the gold ornaments and like that. So when we talk about fast selling product, the fast selling product, the trade credit might not be that important, but when, because the turnover is very fast, so the inventory turns over very fast, so the cash collection happens very fast. But when you talk about the slow selling product, like there is a large operating cycle, and the inventory turnover is quite a number of days. So you have invested in inventory, and the cash will come to you after a very long period of time. So you require to arrange for finance. So in that, at that point of time, then trade credit plays a big role. So if your product is fast selling, then trade credit will be low. If your product is slow selling, slow moving, then your requirement of trade credit will be quite high. Now, the financial position of both the buyer and seller, that also matters a lot. Now, see, the financial position of the seller will influence the quantities and the period of the credit that he wishes to get. Now, whereas the financial position of the buyer, it is an important, will be an important factor in determining the credit quantum and the period. So, the seller's financial position, like the supplier, if he's financially strong, then he can give you trade credit. If your supplier is having shaky financial position, he might not be in a position to grant you trade credit. Similar is the case of the buyer. If you are on the buying side, and you are a big firm, your financial position is good, then you can obviously extract good credit terms from your supplier. But you might not have the requirement, but you can extract the good credit terms from your supplier. So both these position of the buyer and seller, the financial condition of the buyer and seller, has a definite impact on the trade credit that is made available to the businesses. Now, when we talk about the terms of sale, now you see, when I am talking about terms of sale, let us say whether your sale is on the COD, sometimes it could be on cash on delivery basis, or sometimes it could be cash before delivery also. So, whether it is CBD or COD, or probably you are talking about a credit term, like in how many days the payment can be made. So, what kind of term you are selling your product, that also determines the um, like the trade credit available to the business. Now, the cash discount. Now, many times, sorry, many times I've seen that the buyer, as we discussed a few minutes back, the buyer considers the trade credit as a source of interest-free financing. So obviously, if I consider that as an interest-free financing, I will have a tendency. Means the buyer will have a tendency to willfully extend. Suppose the supplier has given me a 30-day credit, and I know for 30 days I'm getting risk, the interest free financing of whatever amount. Let us say the amount is 10 lakh. So the 10 lakh rupees available to me for 30 days, absolutely free of cost. Then I might be tempted to stretch my payment from 30 days to, let us say, 35 days to, let us say, 40 days, because I consider it to be cost free. Now, this kind of willful stretching of this cash payment or deferment of cash, willful stretching of payment, will hurt my supplier's business, because he needs the cash. He also has a requirement of liquidity. So what he will try to do is, when he senses that I am doing it on a purpose to extend my credit facility or the availability of finance, he might introduce the concept of a cash discount. Now, the moment the cash discount comes into picture, the trade credit no more remains a cost free. So we'll discuss how the introduction of a cash discount makes the trade credit, I mean, not free of cost, but with some, with a, in fact, a huge cost. So the supplier might install something called a cash discount, where he will offer me a discount if I pay the amount within a certain date. Otherwise, I can enjoy. If I don't want to avail the discount, then I can enjoy my regular credit period. Now, the point is, if there is cash discount there, then the trade credit has obvious cost. So whether I'm going to whether I'm going to take the advantage of cash discount, that will have an impact on the trade credit. Suppose I am the buying side, and I want to take the advantage of the cash discount, because now it is costly. So the trade credit becomes costly. So in that case, the the availability of trade credit for my business will be lower. We can talk about the degree of risk. Now, the estimate of your credit risk associated with a particular buyer, it will indicate that the what kind of a credit policy you are going to adopt. Now, suppose if a buyer's credit worthiness is of the highest category, then the terms you are going to use for that particular category of buyer, let us say category D, is not going to be equal to a client who has not that good credit rating. So probably we call him the category C kind of buyer. So for category 1 and category 2, you will not, category A is the lowest credit risk, category C is the highest credit risk. So you will design your credit policy according to the degree of risk associated with your clients or with your group of clients. So the trade credit will be greatly affected by the degree of risk of your clients. You can talk about the nature and extent of your competition. So the monopoly, just now we were discussing, if you are dealing with a monopoly status, now it will facilitate the imposition of tight credit terms, whereas the intense competition will promote the tendency to liberalize credit. Now, suppose you are the supplier and you are in a monopoly position, so you can always say that I'll only sell on cash, because you have a monopoly position. Even if you don't grant any credit to your client is bound to buy from you, because you command the monopoly power. But if there are several suppliers available in the market and there is tough competition in the market of gaining market share, so you need to entice the client to do business with you. And how can you do that? You can do that through introduction of a very lucrative credit term for the buyer. So the kind of competition will also decide the kind of credit policy that you will instill for your farm. Now we can talk about the datings. Now this is a peculiar term. What is a dating? In case of seasonal industries, like say the sales fluctuate. So you frequently use these datings to encourage the customers to place their order before a heavy selling period begins. Now this usually happens for the durables. So you encourage the customers to purchase the product even if they don't have the requirement right now. For example, ACs, the purchase happens mostly in the beginning of the summer. Now, but how do you encourage them? Through the credit period, like you buy now, pay later. So with that kind of a policy, you can encourage the customer. So you can use this. The datings will also have an impact on the kind of credit that you have. Now we talk about the important aspect of this credit. This is the cost of credit. You see, the billing methods can vary. The payment of invoices, it may be stipulated as a number of days after the actual transaction that happens. Now, the point is when the supplier wishes to induce the customers to acquire and hold inventories, he resorts to this concept of dating that we just discussed. Now, the point is the trade credit is a built-in source of financing as we just discussed. Now, what is a built-in source? That is, it is normally linked to the production cycle of the purchasing firm. Now, I am the purchasing firm. I am the buyer side. So whatever is my manufacturing cycle or the production cycle, the trade credit will be required likewise. If I'm a trading firm, my production cycle will be different. If I'm a manufacturing firm, my production cycle will be different. Now, no, but where the buyer takes the, so you give the trade credit. Now, the trade credit, since it is regarded as the cost free, then there is a tendency to delay the payment of the cash because it is considered as a cost free source of financing to the buyer. Now, but that is the reason why the buyer might take the privilege of trying to delay the payment. Even if he has the capability to pay on time, he will develop an unwillingness to pay on time because he wants to stretch, he wants to avail the cost free source of finance at your cost. So that is going to hurt your business. Okay, so because if it becomes a regular feature with a client that he is purposefully delaying your payment, then that is going to hurt the supplier. So what he will try to do is, suppose it's purposefully delaying from 30 days to 40 days, it is going to cost you. So the cost is built into this thing when we are talking about the cost of credit. Now, the point is here we need to, at that point of time when he sees that you are purposefully delaying, so he will instill something called a cash discount to encourage the client to pay early. So the moment the trade the supplier instills a cash discount, the credit becomes costly to you. So we will talk about the cost of this cash discount. But before that, I need you to be very clear regarding the distinction between the cash discount, the trade discount, and the quantity discount. Now, cash discount is a discount which is offered by the supplier of a firm to pay early. Okay, so for example, if I have purchased goods worth 10 lakh rupees, the supplier tells me that if you pay within 10 days, you can pay me, let us say, 9 lakh 50,000. I'm just giving an example. So if you pay me 9 lakh 50,000 within 10 days, that is fine. Otherwise, you can pay from the 11th day to the 30th day, you have to pay the whole of the 10 lakh rupee. So this is a example of a cash discount where the seller accepts the reduced payment as the incentive for the paying early. That is called the cash discount. Whereas the trade discount is a reduction from the invoice or the list price, and we see that normally through the channel distribution system. Now, for example, you might have encountered a scenario such as they might show you the MRP of a durable like a washing machine or a TV. They might show you, or a computer. They will show you a MRP, and on that MRP they will give you a discount. Okay, that is called a trade discount. Okay, so that is the component of a trade discount. So on the list price or on the invoice, so they will give you a discount on that. It's called the trade discount. And what is a quantity discount? Quantity discount is a discount where if you buy in bulk, then you get the reduced price. For example, if you buy 5 units of a good, the per unit price of the good is going to be 10 rupee. But if you buy 100 units of the good, then the per unit price of the good is going to be, let's say, 9 rupee 20 paise. So this is kind of a encouragement to buy in bulk. So that is called a quarterly discount. Now here you have to be very clear regarding what kind of a discount we are talking about. We are only focusing here on the cash discount. Okay. Right. So when we talk about this cash discount, the cash discount is allowed for a payment within a specified period, and when we do that, we can talk about a cost of a credit. Now, how does a normal credit period looks like? The normal credit term looks like something like a, let us say, 2 by 10 net 30. Okay, 2 slash 10 net 30. Now the point is, what is the meaning of a 2 by 10 net 30? If you pay within 10 days, you get a 2% discount. 2% as in 2% of the bill value. So if you pay within 10 days, you get a 2% discount. Otherwise, you pay the full amount. You avail the regular credit period of 30 days. I mean, basically, it's not 30 days anymore. From 11 through 30 days, that is another 20 days if you want to avail, you have to pay the full price, full bill value. Now, when we are talking about a cash discount, the cash discount, it is being allowed for a payment within a specified period. So within 10 days, I am allowing you 2% discount. Now, if that is the thing, how can we compute the, as I have been telling you that the moment we have a cash discount, we talk about a cost of the credit. Earlier, we talk, minus the cash discount, it is a cost free, but with a cash discount, there is a cost involved. Now, what is that cost, and how can we compute that? We can compute that through this particular formula, where R, I am showing you, is the effective annual interest rate. Now, what is the interest rate for using this kind of a formula? Now, the point is, if you are paying within 10 days, then you get a 2% cash discount. But if you are stretching for another 20 days, for suppose the bill value is 1 lakh rupee, so you are stretching that 1 lakh rupee for another 20 days, is there any cost involved? So how can we compute that cost? That cost can be computed here like this. R, which is the effective interest rate, can be computed by with this formula, the C. What is the C? C is the cash discount. C divided by 100 minus C, which means C, if we, for our example, if C is 2, 100 minus C will be 98. So 2 divided by 98 into 360 days. We assume that 5 days the business doesn't function. So 360 days divided by D, that is the number of extra days the customer is stretching or is using the supplier's fund. Now, what is that? That is in our case, it is a 20 days. That is 2 by 10 net 30. So 10 days is gone for the cash discount. Then you are availing the discount for another 20 days. So that becomes 2 by 10 net 30. So here it will be 360 divided by 20. Okay, so I'll just work out a few problems with this. So with this example, so let us move ahead. Now, some of the examples. If I talk about a 2 by 10 net 30 credit term, it means that, as I was talking to you, that the cost of deferring the payment by 20 days is 2%. Correct? So if I pay within 10 days, I have to pay, I get a 2% discount. Now, if I stretch by 20 days, then I lose out on that 2%. So the cost of that deferring of that payment is 2%. So if you had not deferred, you would have saved 2%. Now, the point is, if you are, if that, how much could you have saved on an annual basis? Now, if the payment is made 20 days earlier, then 2% can be saved. Now, if you are talking about like that for 360 days, so how much amount you can save? That is 2% into 360 by 20 days, 360 days by 20 days, which is 18 into 2. So that is, you could save, if you take advantage of the cash discount, your savings will be 36%. You can imagine 36% is a whooping amount. Okay, so your annual savings, if you take advantage of the cash discount, then your annual savings will be 36 days. But if you don't avail the cash discount, what is going to be your cost? Is your cost going to be 36% or more than that? we'll see just we'll plug in those values into this particular formula, and we'll see how that works out to. Now if you don't avail the cash discount, now you see when we're talking about plugging the values into this formula, you see the interest rate is so your as per this particular formula, this is in our case it is C is 2, the denominator is 98 into 360 divided by D here is 20. Now if I work out that works out to 36.7%. So the effective interest rate for my purpose here is 36.7%. Quite a big interest rate that works out per annum. Now, let us say if you talk about a bigger credit period, for example, 2 by 20 net 30, then that becomes okay. 2 by the effective interest rate will work out to the this. I'm sorry, this is not actually 2 by 20. This is 2 by 10. 2 by 10 net 60. Then the same formula 2 by 98 into you are stretching for another 50 days, so 360 divided by 50. So that works out to 14.7%. Big drop from 36.7 to 14.7. In fact, if I stretch it further, my credit period, so it will be 2 by 10. Again, that is a mistake. 2 by 10 net 90. Then the effective interest rate will work out to, again going by that particular formula, like 2 by 98 into 360 by 80. So that will work out to 9.2%. Now, as you see, the more and more I stretch my cash discount remaining same 2%, and my period of cash discount remaining same, that is 10 days, the more and more credit period that I'm stretching, the effective interest rate falls. So you see, the if you offer a very big credit period, then there is every day the customer will have every tendency not to avail the cash discount. So you lose out. So you have to be very careful on how much should be the credit period, due credit period beyond the cash discount period, because right now you saw that the more and more credit period that you are granting, the effective interest rate that the customer, that the buyer is thinking about is reducing lesser and lesser. So he has no motivation to make early payment. So the more liberal the credit term, the more is the saving from the cash the savings. I mean, sorry, the savings from the cash discount declines. So you give them a liberal credit term in terms of 90 days credit. 90 days credit, the cash discount, the interest rate declines, the savings from your cash discount declines. So the effective interest rate also of using the fund also declines. So basically, when he sees that the effective interest rate chargeable to the applicable to the buyer is lesser, so he will have a tendency to not take the advantage of the cash discount. However, if the discounts are not taken and the settlement is made earlier than the due date, the effective interest rate is going to vary. Okay, so for example, you don't take the discount of let us say here I am assuming, while doing this calculation, I am assuming that the client is paying on the 30th day or the 60th day or the 90th day. But it might so also happen that the client doesn't take advantage of the cash discount like 10 days. Within 10 days, it doesn't make payment. But he can make payment on the 25th day. He can make payment on the, let us say, in case of 60, he can make payment on the 45th day. In case of 90, he can make payment on the, let us say, 70th day. So if he does like that before the due date, then the effective interest rate will vary, because then you can plug in the values into the equation. The D is changing, so obviously the effective interest rate will vary. For our purpose here, we assume that he is making the payment on the last day itself, but in effective interest rate will vary. So accordingly, he will take a call on when to make the payment. Now, for a firm that resist from taking the cash discount, doesn't want to take the cash discount, the cost of trade declines the longer it is able to delay the payment. Okay, so you see here, just now we saw here that if it doesn't pay for 90 days, his cost is declining to 9.2%. So there is a great motivation on the part of the buyer to stretch it as far as possible. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Because I am the supplier now, I am operating in a competitive environment. I need to give out trade credit. Now, if my client purposefully delays it because he understands that the longer he delays my payment, the more is his savings on the trade credit. So, what do I do? Okay, here the rationale for your availing trade credit should be that it is cost saving over the other forms of short term financing, and it is flexible, it is convenient. Now the point is, I as a buyer, if I stretch your payment, I see that the effective interest rate falls. Now, if I compare it with other forms of finance, suppose in the case of 90 days, we saw that the effective interest rate for stretching, that is 9.2%. Now, if the bank gives me a loan at a much lower rate, then I have no motivation to stretch your the payment and pay a higher interest rate, where in fact I can get a lower at a very low interest rate, I can get a loan and I can finance my payable. So this in addition to that, so that is the call that the buyer will take. We'll just see how that can be done through this example. See, a farm that wants to hold additional inventory but does not have the cash to refinance it. Okay, sorry, to finance it. Now the credit term here applicable to the farm is 2 by 10 net 60 days. So the bank rate is offered is 99%, sorry, 9%. And the question is that what we're talking about now, if the bank is giving you a loan, short term loan at 9%, should you stretch the payment of cash? Now, if you avail 2%, then we understand the savings. But if you don't avail the 2% and you stretch for another 50 days, what is the effective interest rate to you? Now, see, the discount is not taken by the 10th day, and the effective interest on the funds held will be, let us say, using that formula, 2 by 98 into 360 by 50, which is 14.7%. So if you avail the cash discount, this is the savings that you can do. The 14.7% is the savings that you can do, but you are not doing it. Whereas if you approach the bank for a 50-day loan, bank is only going to charge you 9%. So the interest, the cost of your stretching for 50 days, basically you are using your supplier's fund, and the supplier's fund is coming at a cost of 14.7%, whereas the bank is giving you the same fund at 9%. So obviously you will make a choice of paying early within 10 days and borrowing the cash and paying early, so that because the bank rate is only 9%, so it is advisable to take the discount that the firm is offering, even if it involves utilizing the bank borrowing. So you take a bank borrowing and make early payment and save yourself the differential, that is the 14.7 minus the 7%. You save yourself that amount, that rate of return. So this is how the companies take a call on the other source of finance. Now you see, if you purposefully stretch, if the company stretches this payment from 50 days to, let us say, 90 days or 100 days or 120 days, now the effective interest rate will essentially fall to less than 9%. Now if it is less than 9% without any consequences, now the farm sees that the effective interest rate is, let us say, 8%, whereas the bank rate is 9%. So he will have no motivation to pay you early. Okay. However, the stretching of trade credit or accounts payable will cost the buyer. Now, in what way? Number one, you are foregoing the cash discount, that is 2%. Now, and subsequently, you will earn a very poor credit rating. Now, in the competitive business environment, having a very poor credit rating is a dangerous thing to have. Okay, so next time that you approach this particular firm, supplier for supplying of goods, he will come up with a very harsh credit term for you. Okay, so or he might not give you the credit. You might lose out on that particular supplier. So these are the consequences of purposeful delaying of your credit. Now, having discussed these things, You see, there are so many advantages of your payable. Now, what are the advantages? Number one, it is easy to obtain. Just now we saw that the payable or trade credit is most times it is obtainable because it is a norm of the industry. So, in business scenario, the buying and selling of the businesses doesn't happen on cash basis. So, it is quite easy to obtain, more easy than the bank finance. So, that is one the biggest advantage of the payable. Now here the suppliers, they are assuming the risk. Now because uh, the buyer has the option. They treat it as a discretionary payment. I can pay on the anytime between 1 to 30 days, maybe beyond even 30 days without any consequence. So it is here, the because the supplier is assuming the risk, it is the buyer enjoys the scenario. So the for buyers, the payable is a good thing. It is informal. There is no rigidity in the matters of negotiation of the terms of credit and all that. So it is quite informal and easy to arrange. So that is one thing. And the last is, this is a continuous source of financing. Just now we discussed that the because the business is a going concern, the buying and selling continuously happens, and this kind of financing is continuously available to you. So that's a advantage of the this thing, I mean payable. Now, when we talk about the methods of actually managing the payable effectively, what you can do? Number one, that you negotiate the most favorable credit term with the prevailing commercial practice. Now, whatever product line you are in as per the market standard, you negotiate and try to obtain the most favorable credit term. You our discussion on the cash discount tells us that the supplier gives you a cash discount to make a prompt payment. Now you should always take advantage of the cash discount, okay? Because the foregoing of the cash discount is going by the bank rates. We see that the cash discounts are very I mean the cost effective. Taking advantage of the cash discount is very cost effective. So it always makes sense to take advantage of the cash discount. Now if there is no cash discount provided, settle the payable on the date of maturity. For example, 2 by 10 at 30. So it makes sense. And suppose, I mean, let's say there is no cash discount. So the simple credit term is pay by 30 days. Okay. So it does not make sense if you have no cash discount. It doesn't make sense to pay a day earlier than 30 days, because your supplier has allowed you 30 days. You pay only on the 30th day. There is no need to pay on the 28th day or the 29th day. Okay. So if there is no cash discount, so pay on the 30th day. And however, do not stretch the payable beyond a due date. There is no cash discount, pay on the last day, not a day early. But if on the due date you must make the payment, only in unavoidable circumstances you can resort to deferment of payment beyond the due date. Now, because you see these kind of delays in meeting the obligations that whatever you have, it will have a very adverse impact on the credibility, on your own credibility, and it will result in future. It will lead to stricter credit terms, maybe complete denial of credit, or the higher prices of goods and services. The supplier will try to build the cost of credit into the prices of the goods. That is a very hard scenario. Now the you have to sustain healthy financial status and a good track record of your past dealings, so that it would maintain the confidence of your supplier. And because the quantum and the terms of credit is mainly influenced by the supplier's assessment of the buyer's financial health and your ability to meet that particular the obligation. Now again, the in the case of highly competitive situations, The supplier may have the motivation to stretch the credit limit and period. So you assess your bargaining strength and get the best possible deal. Okay, so that is then you have the don't divert your payable to other sources. Okay, suppose maintain the self liquidating character of your payables and do not use these funds to use elsewhere. For example, sometimes we know that, well, I have to pay within after 20 days, so it doesn't mean that the fund that you have meant earmarked for the payment of payable, you will put it to some other use, and on the 30th day the fund is not available. So don't divert. You maintain the self liquidating character of your payable. So that is a prudent management of payables. You disclose full information to the supplier and the concerned credit agencies, so that you can get a fair assessment of your financial status and the associated problems. See, if you disclose, if you disclose the full information, your credit rating will be appropriate and honest. And probably the credit term, see, it doesn't make sense to avail a credit term which you cannot stick to. So whatever when your credit term is, credit health is being assessed, it always makes sense to provide full information so that an appropriate credit policy can be designed for your particular purpose. Okay, you should always keep a check on the incidence of your delinquency, because delays in settlement of payables as regards the due date, it can be it can be categorized into age groups like 1 month age, 2 month age, 3 month age. Now, the once you are overdue, the payables are given priority attention for payment. You can reduce the delinquency rate. So you have to reduce the purposeful delay. You have to coordinate between the purchase department, accounts department for the same. You have to resort to electronic fund transfers or RTGS practices, and move towards the paperless processing. Now you will have to have a command of the data flow regarding the suppliers, the shortages, the market trends, all these things, to be able to effectively manage your payables. Okay, and you can follow these guiding principles for a good management of your payables. In fact, in an interesting study done in the Institute of Finance and Management at Geneva, they found out there are 17 interesting ways of optimizing our accounts payable. Now, what are those 17 different ways? Now, I have listed them for you here. Now, those 17 interesting things are: number one is a self-service portal for your vendors. Now, what is a self-service portal? Now, these are proactive solutions that for your communication with your vendors, for vendor onboarding, for supplier information management. So what you do is you built into this thing, this self-service supplier portal into your company's website through ERP, and facilitate through software and data synchronization. This will result in great efficiency. So the supplier can interact uh, uh, with your portal through this particular channel. So that is one thing available. You can talk about the travel and expense automation. Now, what is this travel and expense automation? This is a process in which we use the specialized expense management software which have been developed by various agencies. This captures the and report and process and reimburse the travel and related expenses of your employees. This increases compliance activities. This increases, streamlines the process end to end, and in fact increases the productivity. You can have this spend analysis for vendor consolidation. Now, what is a spend analysis? Spend analysis, it provides insight into the spending trends and purchasing patterns across the enterprise. How things are, on what aspects there is spending, and what are the purchasing patterns. So you can have insight into these things. It will This kind of things, it will help you make better and future friendly decisions. Now the spend analysis, it allows you to create opportunities for your supplier consolidation and benchmarking, and it will also help you improve your efficiency across the value chain. You can talk about the electronic data interchange. The It is a business information through a standardized format. Now it is a process that will allow a company to send information to other company electronically rather than with paper. Now the reduction of dependency on paper will ensure that there will be lesser errors caused by the manual data entry, and sometimes we cannot read the handwriting that is written on the invoice, leading to misinterpretation of information. So all these things can be dealt with through this electronic data interchange or EDI. You can have the automated clearing houses. Now it's a basically a nationwide network through which the various depository institutions they interact with each other, of these batches of credit transfers and debit transfers. These what could be the direct transfers? For example, the payrolls, the social security benefits such as ESI, PF, and all those things. The tax refunds. These are all examples of these automated clearing house transfer systems. We can think about the migrating the suppliers to e-invoicing instead of hard copy invoicing. You can talk about the electronic invoicing. You can talk about the document imaging as and when it is received, like automatic capture of these things. Automated workflows, invoice approval, the automated data capture. You can talk about the cash forecasting with the payables data. So several things. One of the interesting thing that is mentioned here is a recovery audit. Now the recovery audit is basically a systematic process of disbursement that we have made. Whatever payment we have made, we review them under this recovery audit, review the various transactions, and study the related supporting data, identify and try to recover from various forms of overpayments and under reductions to suppliers. So basically, it might so happen that if you are have ever interacted with a cash department of a firm, many times the whatever you are supposed to pay, you make an overpayment, and suppose you are supposed to deduct something, you have not deducted the same amount. In fact, in my experience, I've also come across scenarios where a payment has wrongly been sent to another party. So if you have this kind of, and these are very very minuscule things, but if you look at them on an aggregate basis, the amount the amount could be humongous. Now the point is, if you have a recovery audit, these small things you can track. Suppose there is a overpayment of even to the tune of 1,000 rupees. There could be several overpayments like that. So that will be tracked, that will be processed, and there will be recovery. Similarly, there is a deduction or payment to a faulty party. All these things will be reviewed and then tracked, and then the recovery will be done. So basically, this recovery audit will help you recover your lost money, which is very important. Of course, we know about outsourcing or offshoring of something that we don't want to do in our facility. We can talk about these P cards, basically the purchase card or the procurement card. This is a trend which is fast catching up with the business houses. Now, these are the cards that are given to some kind of a credit cards. You give them to the workers who make use of this kind of P cards or the purchase cards. So, see, many times there are small purchases or small expenses that have to be done at the level of the employee himself. So, for every purchase, if the employee depends on the supervisor or the superior authorities' approval, the approval itself is a time-taking process, and involves a lot of paperwork. So these P cards essentially ensure what is that you make payment. I mean, Using these kind of credit cards, you make payment then and there, and you bypass the system of your this thing, requesting for an approval, the procedure, all these things which could take days, sometimes even weeks. You can bypass those kind of systems through this use of P cards. So the employees are authorized to make small payments. These are obviously, you don't make large payments using P cards. You can have like evaluated receipt settlements. You can have wave invoicing. Instead of sending the invoice in a paper format or a hard copy format, you can use the wave for the invoicing system. You can talk about a dynamic discounting. Now dynamic discounting is a system where if the client makes a payment on any day, suppose your credit period is 30 days, the client makes a payment, decides to make a payment on the 19th day, the automatically the software will calculate the amount of discount that is to be given to him, because he is not waiting for 30 days, but he is waiting, making the payment on 19 days. So it will be automatically calculated, and the discount will be applicable to his invoice. So these kind of systems are called as dynamic discounting. So these are the methods identified in that particular study. The 17 criteria identified, so which can optimize your accounts payable. However, your organization can use, organizations don't use all of them, but 2 or 3 if you can use for optimizing your accounts payable, that will be good enough for the your business. You can decide which is the best fit for your organization, and you can pick up any one or 2 or 3 of these list that I have provided to you. So with this, I think we come to the end of today's discussion on accounts payable. Thank you.